2020. You are now riding with the Digital Diaspora. We now ask the ancestors for permission to venerate them. Charlie Weems, Ibaye. Ozzie Powell, Ibaye. Clarence Norris, Ibaye. Andrew and Leroy Wright, Ibaye. Olin Montgomery, Ibaye. Willie Roberson, Ibaye. Haywood Patterson, Ibaye. Eugene Williams, Ibaye. Lena Baker, Ibaye. George Stinney, Ibaye. And of course, Dr. John Henry Clark, Ibaye. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And we now welcome you to another edition of the Digital Diaspora. This is our 11th program, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Pull it up something. Gotcha. It's our 11th program that we're going into, and it's been one hell of a ride. Giving you an understanding of those individuals that we just venerated because it ties into our program today. The first few individuals that I named, the nine young men, are the Scottsboro Boys from the case in 1931 where you had a cadre of young black men that had allegations lodged against them that they had raped. What else? A white woman. If you're not familiar with that case, the Scottsboro Boys, do a little research. Lena Baker. If anyone is not familiar with Lena Baker is the woman in the movie that Tichina Arnold played. Tichina Arnold played a movie, which was a really good movie. She should have gotten an award for that, where it was a black woman who was actually kidnapped by a white man. He just kept going back and kidnapping this woman, and she got tired of it, and she killed him. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they wound up giving her life. And George Stinney, you might see that in some of your memes that come up in social media. George Stinney was actually the youngest person executed. They said that he had, I think if I'm not mistaken, they said he had killed a girl. Of course, years later, he got exonerated. They said there's no way in the world that he could have done that. I don't know if it was one or two, but this happened in South Carolina, Alculu, South Carolina. And this actually ties into our program today. And these are some things to think about when you see these candidates, these Democratic candidates, talk about all of the things they're going to do, things that they're going to do regarding criminal justice reform. We need to pay attention to it, but we also need to pay attention to the historical legacy, how this thing has been going on for as long as it has been going on and has been going on and has been going on, and how it has affected us, even to the present, where you had one of the candidates on the stage who was responsible for stop and frisk for the 12 years that he was in office, and he lied and said that he stopped it, but there was a court order that it be stopped. See, we're going to have to stop letting people tell us whatever they want to tell us. We're going to have to stop letting other people dictate the narratives that our community continuously receives. We have to stop letting people tell us whatever they want to tell us. So we're going to go into a little bit of the national news. And we always start off with giving veneration to my hero, Dr. Clark. And I'm trying to fully quotient of music being played. So we're going to go into one of DJ Wiz's productions.
point I wish to get across before we start anything. I am not here to debate with anyone. I have devoted all of my adult life to this subject. I only debate with my equals. All others I teach.
Yes, this is the Digital Diaspora. I am your host, Ali Babatunde. And got a really good show for you today, but just wanted to touch a few things before we dived into our interview. We got a lot going on. We got a lot going on with these elections, and I kind of touched on it with one of the individuals who was actually who participated in the debate. And I could fact check that. You don't need no computer. You don't need no whole bunch of researchers. There were some things that we've just been privy to because we live in this part of the United States that we just knew wasn't true. Sometimes you have to question a system that tells you that you're not seeing what you see. When somebody plays a video for you of someone and words coming out of their mouths. Words are coming out and they're telling you that redlining is what caused the crash. That they can come back and tell you later on, no, that's not what I said. You just said that. You just said that. We have to be able to challenge these sentiments even when others don't. Especially when it concerns us. You see, for so long, we've allowed other people to I don't know, defend us. We've allowed other people to narrate the story, and we don't need that, okay? We don't need someone else to tell us that that's not what he said when we all saw it. We all saw the video. We all saw when Bloomberg said that not enough minorities are being checked, and white men are being checked too much. I didn't make that up. That's not me shooting from the hip. That's what he said. So you're supposed to just forget that. But they want you to make concessions because they say, oh, you need more moderates. You need more moderates. And listen, slow down. Slow down. Elizabeth Warren, she's going a little too far left. Bernie Sanders, he's going a little too far left. At the end of the day, they just don't want to hear your concerns or what serves your best interests. You notice that during every debate, when they start talking about the issues that plague African people or those of African descent, the crowd kind of gets quiet and they talk about it briefly and then they move on. You got to pay attention to the details. You got to pay attention to the details. So this whole ride's been pretty interesting. And we're going to move from that because I'm going to really touch on that the next time we talk because I want to donate most of this time to our guests. And I want to touch on something really quick with this coronavirus. We actually talked about that 2 shows ago, but I just want to give some advice. Cover your mouth when you're sneezing. Cover your mouth when you're coughing. When you go to the bathroom, especially in public places, wash your hands. I shouldn't have to tell you that. I really shouldn't have to tell you that. Wash your hands. Cough into your elbow. Of course you can't physically cough into your elbow. You know what they're saying. Coughing. This is what you do. Cough into your elbow. I'm telling you, we're facing some things that I've never seen my entire life, and let's not give let's not feed this thing and make it worse than it can be. There's certain things that we can do to kind of contain ourselves from germs, and this is something that I shouldn't have to say. This is something that other people shouldn't have to necessarily say either. Okay, be mindful. Be mindful when you're around other people. I was just with my guest. She didn't see it, and I didn't want to really go into it. A brother came in a spot in the restaurant, and he sneezed, didn't cover his mouth. He just turned his head and sneezed on a chair that was in there. I'm like, with all of this stuff going on, why would you not cover your mouth? That's a whole nother issue, man. But just be mindful of the environment that you are in, and protect yourself at all costs. All right? Please protect yourself and protect others. You're protecting others by taking care of yourself. All right? So this is the Digital Diaspora. We're going to go into our next song, and then we're going to introduce our guest. This is Digital Diaspora. Yes, this is the Digital Diaspora. I am your host, Ali Babatunde, and we have a special guest. And I know that I always say that when we have guests, but this is one that is extremely, extremely special. And I've been trying to actually get her to come into our studio for some time now, and it's actually personal for me. To have this woman here, because at the ripe age of 18, 19 years old, I'll never forget, before I went down to Johnson C. Smith University, and there was a case, one of the cases that I'll never forget, that I guess it was our 1931 Scottsboro boys issue, contemporary times, the Central Park Five, or the exonerated five. And one thing that I remember during that time, before I went back to school or when I was in school, I'll never forget that they put on TV was all over the place. And they were talking about these kids that had raped this woman in Central Park. And if it was nothing that I could remember, if there was nothing about this case that I could ever remember, I remembered this woman. And it was just incredible because from the time she went in to let you know that her son was innocent, you believed her. I believed her. People in our communities believed her. And as time went on and we got more evidence and more truth started to come out, you saw that this woman knew what she was talking about from the beginning. And it was the type of fearlessness that we need to start having with our children and our young men before going and serving what they call football sentences. I think they call it football sentences because the numbers, they go so high. Where you have all of these men that have gone and done this time for everyone to find out that they didn't do it. So now they're coming out with laws, specifically in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, where if they do all of this time, that they're not open to getting compensated for that. Without further ado, I want to introduce Ms. Sharonne Salaam. How are you, ma'am?
I am very well, thank you.
Very good, very good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, too.
Feeling good, feeling good. I got to ask you this. Again, it's just playing back in my head because it's just playing back in my head. When did you realize that this thing was going crazy? This thing was getting out of hand, that your son was innocent? What moment? I mean, obviously, we know all of them were innocent at this point, but what was the moment for you? What was the moment in your eyes that you realized that your son was telling the truth?
Well, I realized that when I found out what had happened. So when I found out what had happened, I felt it was impossible for my son to have been involved in anything like that in any kind of way. And I also realized after seeing what the police were doing with had done with the other children that they had arrested,
Right.
that they were probably all innocent too.
So you knew via your son, you know your
yeah.
son wasn't involved in that, but then
Yeah.
you said these other kids couldn't have been involved either. Did you know any of the other?
Well, I knew one of the children. I knew Corey Wise.
Okay, okay. And I say that because a lot of times we know what our children's children are capable of doing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he might have did this, he might have did that, but we know he didn't do that.
That's correct.
So we know that. So once that happened, I know I read someplace, I did a little reading before we came in for you to be interviewed,
Okay.
where you said that you said, listen, I'm going to go to the public, I'm going to go to the media and let them know you're not allowing me to see my child. So was that the case with all of them, that none of them were able to have their parents present while they were being interrogated?
Well, I don't know what was happening with all of them
Right,
because some of them had been arrested the night before,
right.
and some of their parents were present when they were arrested.
Okay,
Not necessarily when they were arrested, but as soon after they were arrested, at some point, their parents were notified.
okay.
The
okay.
only one that I know was arrested on the day that my son was arrested was obviously Yusef, that's
Right.
my son, and Corey Wise, and another boy, Antron McCray.
Right, right,
The others had already been arrested.
right. You know what? Question is on topic but off topic a little bit. Did the When They See Us, did it do you justice?
Well, I don't know what if something like that can really do you justice, because
True.
kind of situation went
Absolutely.
on for, what was it? Was it 20 years, 30 years? What kind of justice can they do you?
That's right.
You know, because they're taking bits and pieces of a story
That happened over a period of time.
that happened over a period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
And they're squinching it into 4 hours,
Right.
you know. So they do their best to do you justice.
Right. Right. And you know, I said the same thing. I mean, I have no personal connection to any of the young men. I had no personal connection to you, and I said the same thing because this
Yeah.
thing went on for so long. And not only that, but just when I never forget, I read that full page ad that Donald Trump put in the newspaper.
Yes.
And I said, you know, this is crazy. This is crazy. And I knew that. And again, my mother would send me the City Sun and the Amsterdam News. City Sun is a newspaper
Right.
that is not out anymore. And the Amsterdam News, and she would send it to me every week because for whatever reason, I just had a connection to this case.
Right.
But it was awful. It
Yes,
was
it
awful.
was.
Yeah, it was awful, and especially the one who did the most, the one who did the most time in the prison, I guess because of the age. But I guess you can't make that right. You can't
Well,
make that
it's very
situation right.
difficult to make any of these types of situations right when you're in a situation where the people you're dealing with have been wrongfully accused,
Right.
wrongfully convicted,
Right.
wrongfully imprisoned. How can you begin to make something like that right? You know, we have never been apologized to. No one has come and said, gee, I'm sorry for what I did to you. Not one of the DAs and none of those people.
Right.
They don't feel any
Remorse.
sorrow.
They don't have to.
And they haven't even shown any kind of accountability for the stuff that happened. You know, they get off scot-free. We go through hell.
Right. Absolutely. And that's part of my argument regarding
Yeah.
this whole criminal justice reform thing and how you have the those who are in power and those that have influence that will say, oh, well, you know, just slow down. It's going to come. What do you mean slow down? You know, you're talking
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah, because it's been coming. It's been coming for a long time, and we're still waiting. It's almost like every 10 years something come, and then the next 10 years some go back. Then we work for the next 10 years for something else to come, and we just going back and forth on this seesaw.
Right.
You know, it's a very interesting place that they have us in as a people.
Right.
Where you can't really move forward and at the end of the day still be in that forward position.
Right.
It's always something there to pull you back. And many of these egregious laws are set up in certain ways so that they keep you at a disadvantage, no matter what you do or how you try to pull yourself up.
Right.
It's just this type of society we're in, you know, because you have to remember the people who came here from Europe to develop this country, many of them were fleeing persecution.
Absolutely.
Was set out of jail.
That's right.
And running to not starve to death. All types of things. And they came here to this land, and they brought a lot of the feelings and thoughts with them and the behaviors that existed in those societies that they came from. They brought those here and reintroduced them into this society. But instead of them being on the low end, now they're on the top.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, it's
Yeah.
another ironic thing. You know, we were just at Blueberry Vegan Cafe. Shout out to Guinness and the staff at the Blueberry Vegan Cafe, and we saw the brother who wrote this book, brother Bahir Kamal, From Slavery to Prison. You ever get a chance, get this book. This book came out years before Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, and it's a concise writing. I mean, he starts from how the enslavement of African people led into the penal system, led into the prison industrial complex. Very, very good book. And when I brought it, I literally brought it because I wanted to support him. You know, I know him. We went to the same dojo and the whole nine. But once I was able to read it and get into it, I'm like, wow, this book is really good. Another book that has been out for a while, it's been out for a minute, Tracy McIntyre. It's called Criminalizing a Race. Free Blacks During Slavery. Criminalizing a Race. If you ever get a chance, get that book. And we know that Tracy McIntyre was no joke. She was no joke. She was fearless. She was fearless. And it's ironic because, I didn't invite you because I couldn't get Yusef, or that I was trying to get Yusef on. I literally wanted to sit down and talk to you and eternalize this whole thing because, again, what you did is what some parents wish they could do. Sometimes parents don't say things because they just don't know how to articulate the pain. They just don't know how to speak to their child being railroaded or the injustice being done to their child. And a lot of times they see that. Sometimes the system sees that and they keep moving forward. And like my mother used to always say, the squeaky wheel gets oil. But if you don't say anything, they're going to just trample over your rights, and then you're going to find out later. And then sometimes you don't find out at all.
That's true. That's true.
And they wear those charges like the Scarlet Letter. Can't get a job, can't get a decent job. God forbid drugs are involved. And if drugs are involved, what happens? You can't get a student loan if that's what you were going to use to go to school. So now what? So again, I just think that you need to get your roses now.
Me too. Yes. I want to get as many of them as I can.
You need to get your roses, and this is one of my ways of kind of like of doing that. We're going to go into the next song, and then I want to go into the initiative that you're supporting. This is the Digital Diaspora, and this is Ali Babatunde, and I'm here with Miss Sharonne Salaam.
And don't know why I'm sad. Is it that I'm lonely for you? Are you lonely for me too? We must be in love. I miss your tender kiss. Your tender kiss is what I miss. I have a strange desire for your lips of fire. We must be in love. Oh, tell me now, do you love me too? I do. Do you love me tenderly? I do hope that you'll agree. We must be in love. We must be in love. Your tender kiss is what I miss. I have a strange desire for your lips of fire. We must be in love.
Yes. We are back with the Digital Diaspora. And again, we have a special guest with us today who we are giving her roses to her now, today, currently. All right? You're involved with another initiative, and I think that that's part of the reason why that you said that you would come and allow me to interview you. And I think it's called the Wrongful Conviction Legislation, right?
Wrongful Conviction Restitution
Wrongful
Act.
Conviction Restitution Act.
Yes, it is.
What is that?
Well, that is our response to prison reform for those people who have been wrongfully convicted.
Got you.
And it talks to the financial recovery for the suffering that they've done behind bars, and it also talks to their healing in terms of their education, housing, jobs, and other types of things that affect people who have been wrongfully convicted. And
Right.
also a piece in there regarding their offspring. You know, it doesn't cover everything, but it is a beginning, and we are trying to get that wrongful conviction restitution act passed in New York State.
Gotcha.
It's bill number 2074
2074.
in the Assembly.
Now-
No, in the Senate, excuse me.
Right, because I was going to say
In
the
this-
senator
yeah.
that you told me about, I think is actually on the floor now. I think we were talking. I'm not sure whether you knew it was on the floor or not. And I went and I checked, did a little research or whatever,
Okay.
and they said that it was actually on the floor. So I guess they're going to start debating it now.
Well,
But-
I should hope so. It's
Yeah.
been up there for long enough for them to have debated it, passed it, and so I could get my next bill rolling. I got another one in the hopper.
well, you know what? Let's touch that. Let's touch on the new bill. Well, let's talk about this bill for a second.
This
right?
one here is the one we're trying to get out there because we want to give those people who have been wrongfully convicted an opportunity to move on with their lives and get fulfillment. We're not trying to have a situation where, like that young man who spent 3 years in prison, never had.
Khalil Browder.
That's correct. That's
Rikers
correct.
Island.
Rikers Island.
That's right.
Never went to trial. But he was there for 3 years waiting for trial, waiting for something.
Getting jumped, all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
Assaulted.
And finally, after 3 years, they decided that they were going to drop the charges. And this was a kid on his way to school
Right, with a book bag.
with a book bag. They were going to drop the charges. So when they dropped the charges and let him go, soon after that, he came out in the horror of being incarcerated. See, most of us don't really experience these types of things, but the horror of being incarcerated was so overwhelming that young boy committed suicide.
Right.
You see now, and who's going to be held accountable for stealing his life?
That's right. That's right.
You see?
You know what adds? You know what other thing you could add on to that? How about this? This sounds like it makes sense.
Oh yes, it must. Yeah, it does.
Somebody or something, i.e., the system, being held accountable for for what actually happened, right? But you know what? When things start getting cloudy, things start getting cloudy because of the population of people that we're talking about. See, that's why there's no push. I don't think. This is why people are not jumping all over this, saying, "Hey, this makes sense." For somebody to have done X amount of years in jail, you know what? There needs to be some type of restitution, right? But we don't hear anything about it. How long has that legislation been in existence?
It's been, we introduced that bill about 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just getting on the floor.
If that's what you're telling me,
Well,
that's what you're telling me. But you know, I'm hoping it's getting someplace because it's time for it. It's long overdue, and really, it's only justice. It's only
Right.
justice because I'm sure if it had been their children or their loved one, their husbands, their wives, I'm sure they would want some sort of accountability, some sort of restitution going back for them. But you know, this country was not built on restitution. It was built on a system of free labor, and the free labor continues into the prison industrial complex with a lot of these companies hiring these prisoners out to do work, whatever kind of work it might be, but working for little of nothing. Some of them might be getting 50 cents an hour. You know, if they're getting $3, that's a hell of a lot. You see? And when you come out in the world, even as a prisoner who has been convicted of a crime he did, when you come out in the world, you can't go to these companies. Because at one time, you know, Toys R Us had prison labor.
right.
And I use that because to say that most people wouldn't believe that Toys R Us, a company that's doing stuff for children,
Right.
has prison labor. But if you go there and you work for the Toys R Us factories in these prisons and you come out, you can't go over to Toys R Us and say, listen, I've been stuffing your dolls for 10 years, can you give me a job?
Right.
They're not interested in that.
Right.
You see, you don't get a pension, you don't get a hourly wage. No law helps you, because when you're in prison, you are reduced to slavery. And that's what you become behind those walls. When you come out, there's a transition period. And during that transition period, you have to learn how it's okay for you to go in the refrigerator in your own house. You don't have to ask to get a glass of milk. You don't have to check and make sure it's okay for you to cross the street. You don't come out the same way you went in.
Right.
And all we are asking for in this bill is a healing for the suffering that people have been enduring for whatever amount of years they've been in jail. You know, just recently, there was people who are coming out and they had spent 25 years in jail. Now, most of these high sentences, you're talking about people who are on death row. You know, people who are in solitary confinement. You're spending 23 hours out of day in solitary. It takes a minute for you to come out and realize, yes, I can go to the bathroom without looking for the guard to ask, can I go to the bathroom? Can I take a shower? This is what we are reducing these people to. And what is so unfortunate about it is that many of the people on the outside who are not of color, and some who are of color, black people, white people, red people, yellow people, believe that whatever happens to you while you're in jail is
deserved.
okay.
Right. It's deserved.
It's
right.
okay. They don't think of the innocent person in jail until they are that innocent person. And we have to get beyond that. Because I want many of you who are listening to this today to just think, if you walked down the street and you saw the police had someone up against the wall, what would you say? I wonder what they did. You wouldn't say, oh, gee, the police might have the wrong person.
That's right.
But in our subconscious, we've been trained to think that is something wrong with us and that we are capable of doing all kinds of things that are low life in our behavior.
Right.
This is a belief that has been thrust upon us. And the majority of us, the vast majority, are not out committing crimes,
Right.
are not out raping anybody,
That's right.
or doing any kind of thing that would deserve this type of behavior put upon us by the prison industrial complex.
Right.
But since we have the prison industrial complex, someone has to be in those cells because there are not enough paying jobs outside.
That's right.
You know, and when you're in those cells, the market that created the United States of America, the free labor market, continues to be a vital part of this society.
Right.
It continues to live because you still have the free laborers behind the bars.
Right.
You know, it's unfortunate that we, as our society, has not moved beyond free labor, where everybody can have a job.
That's right.
But this society is not built on that premise. It's built on a premises that somebody has to be unemployed, even if they have a PhD.
That's right.
So
Wow.
education doesn't matter
That's
in
right.
this kind of sense.
Absolutely.
There are laws now, and people who are in jail, if you look at the 3 strikes and you're outlaw, there's some people in jail who stole a sandwich. And they're doing life because it was their 3rd strike. Nobody offered them a job the 2nd time. Nobody offered them a chance the 1st time. But on the 3rd time, they offered them life. We have so many seniors who are in jail who are unable to take care of themselves. And the reason that they're there is because there's a financial interest in keeping them behind bars.
Right.
And if you take the money out of the prison industrial complex, all those cells would open up. It wouldn't be any need for those people.
Right.
You wouldn't have nobody working in there.
That's right.
But as long as there's money to be made, there will be a prison industrial complex, and they will be looking for people to fill those cells. The only thing that's saving us today, and I hate to say this, but deep in your heart you know it's true, is the immigrants trying to get into this country from Mexico and from other parts of South America who are coming into that vein. Because they are using those children, they're using those parents to fill those jobs, and millions is being made off of detaining those people. Millions. And as long as there's money in it, nobody wants to let go.
Right. Wow, powerful stuff. Powerful. Let me ask you, you said you had another bill that's waiting in the wings.
Oh, I'm
After
trying
that
to let this one get through.
So you want to talk about that one yet?
Jinx
No
it.
problem.
I want to get this
No
one
problem.
through.
Let me ask you,
Yes.
this fearlessness, because that's what it is, this fearlessness that you have right now, do you think that if you didn't have this personal experience with your son, do you think that you would have been as vested in this as you are?
Well, I really don't want to say yes, and I don't want to say no, because you never know.
True.
You know, all you know is this happened.
Right.
And as a result of this, or before this, I was working just like everybody else, trying to make a living every day, trying to
right.
make sure I had food on the table, a room for my kids to sleep in, clothes to put on their backs.
Okay.
You see?
Gotcha.
So when this happened, it changes a lot of things for you.
Right.
Because the families are also caught up in this
Yes.
complex.
Absolutely.
Many of us lost our jobs. Many of the people were, driven into different levels of mental distress and to alcoholism and all kinds of things that's happening. Nobody looks at the impact of this on the people who are left behind, on the families that are still there fighting for their children. Each parent fought for their children in the way they could, and they fought for them every day. Some of them prayed, some of them cried, some of them did all kind of things, but they did whatever they could in their own way. You see? And I did what I could in my way.
Right.
But we did it. And now that our children are out of the prison industrial complex, we have to try to look and see, well, how can we improve on this system?
How can we make this thing better? Right.
Yes, because this government doesn't seem to want to stop finding innocent people to put in jail.
Right.
So we have to now make the system better for those people who are coming out so that they have an opportunity to fulfill their lives and enter into life whatever types of happiness they have. Because there are some people who come out. It was one gentleman who came out of prison, and within 2 years he had died. All his life was gone, and he was innocent. You see? Nobody cries for that person other than his immediate family. Nobody say, wow, let's do something for him. Let's do something for his family. It's like you're in a system and they don't really care about you.
Right. Right.
You're just somebody to be used and discarded. And when they finish with you, they throw you aside. This bill is saying, look, we've been used, we've been discarded, now we want to be made whole. It's the type of bill that should be in every state of the United States. And for those who are out there who are interested in it, look it up. In the New York State Legislature, look up this bill, Wrongful Incarceration Recovery Act. The number is 2074. Now, we're going to be walking to Albany on May the 10th. That's Mother's Day. We're going to be leaving out of New York City. right at Central Park in Harlem. And we're going to be going up to Albany. It's going to take us 10 days to get there. Join us. If you don't want to walk the 10 days, meet us there.
That's right.
If you want to come on one day and you can't come on another, do that, because I'm a firm believer in the premise that no man should give up his job and no woman should give up her job. They have children at home who need to be fed. I'm not in any position to feed nobody's children. I need you working.
That's right.
Come on the day you can come. I'll be glad to see you.
Absolutely.
Yes, meet us
Absolutely.
there. We'll be there, and we're going to be meeting with our legislator on a Tuesday, on the 19th, because we're leaving on the 10th, so we're counting that day. The 10th is May 10th is 1, and we're going to be stopping along the way.
Absolutely.
Bring your busload with you.
Right.
Head on up to not up to Washington,
Albany.
but head up to Albany.
Right.
Albany, New York.
Right.
And sooner or later, we're going to be heading to Washington, too. But we have to start somewhere.
Right.
And this happened in our backyard in New
right.
York State.
Right.
So we're starting where it happened. But these cases of wrongful convictions are all over the United States. Every state probably has somebody in it that they have wrongfully convicted. When they had the trial for our children and convicted them of this case during that same period that Patricia Mealy had been raped in Central Park, there was a black woman who was raped and thrown off the roof.
Right. Right.
And nobody sent not one police out.
And it
to try to find out
it was
who did
allegedly
it.
the same individual that raped her, right?
I don't know who it was, because nobody ever identified that person. But one thing I do know, that the one who raped her, Matias Reyes, when he
Yes.
confessed, they didn't want to believe he had raped her. And so one of the things he did to convince them that he was the rapist, he told them about 4 more cases of people that they had not solved, that he had also raped. And when I look at his story and I remember him, I think about one of the things he said. And one of them was that while he was incarcerated, he found Jesus. And for the religious community out there, there's something called the Holy Ghost. And I always think of what happened to him is that at a certain point when he found Jesus, in whatever Christian vein he was in, it said he had to atone for his sins. So he was seeking accountability
Right.
because he wanted to be able to put these thoughts behind him in his past and move into his new life. And there's another piece of the puzzle, which I call the Holy Ghost. And if you remember, there was a time when Jesus died that they sent the Holy Ghost to his disciples that were waiting for him in this place. So when the Holy Ghost came upon them, it shook up the whole thing within their being and changed them into prophets and other types of people. And this is what had happened to him. The Holy Ghost had entered him and would not let him go. So with each time the DA said, the warden said, the priest said, or whoever said, I don't believe you, he spit out some more information because the Holy Ghost wouldn't let it go. And he was spitting out so much stuff that they had to start investigating what he was saying. And one day he called, I think it was 2020 or one of those TV shows.
Right.
And they actually took his call. See how God worked?
Ain't that something?
They took his
Won't he do
call
it?
from jail.
Won't he do it?
Took his call from jail. And they also started investigating after they talked to him.
That's the one that's the show I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's the show. It was on ABC 20. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was 2020.
They
Absolutely.
went up and they also investigated. And they came back and did their report regarding the case that would never die.
Wow.
And that's what it was. So I have to thank God. I have to thank Matias Reyes. And I have to thank the Holy Ghost for not letting him go.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
And really, when you look at it, and he was in this prison with one of the other young fellas,
Right.
Corey Wise, at this time. And he recognized Corey Wise, but I don't think Corey recognized him. They had met before. It's in some incident that they had where they were fighting, and Yusef was fighting it. Somebody jumped him at one time. You know, when you go to jail, a lot of people jump you, you know, and you have to keep your wits and your head about you.
That's right.
And all this stuff that you see around you, and it's difficult because my son, when this happened to him, had just turned 15, and it was other kids there who had just turned 14. And Corey was the only one that was 16. He was the oldest one in the bunch. So these were just children. They stole their lives. They stole their childhood.
You're talking about 5 different individuals, and and some of them didn't even know each other. So
yeah, I know I didn't know them all, but I recognized them
from the community.
Right. Some I recognized from the building. Some I recognized from passing them along the street.
Right.
And a lot of them my son didn't know. A lot of them didn't know each other. The only one I knew was the one who used to come into my house.
Right.
Was Corey Wise.
They say that there were 2 other young men, and Alton Maddox, I think, defended one.
Well, Alton Maddox was there with one, yes, early on.
Right.
Because he was able to get his young man out. But his young man had never been accused of the rape.
Okay.
Now, when they did, I'm sure many of you in the community are familiar with this term called dragnet.
Yeah.
At one time, they had a movie called Dragnet.
Right.
But dragnet is when the police go around and they put a net and drag everybody in it.
Right. Conspiracy, actually.
Yeah. So this is what happened. They put a net and they was dragging all the children in it. So it could have been 100 children that they actually drug into this net, because there are a lot of children that lives within those blocks around the park.
Right.
So you don't really know how many it was. Now there were some who confessed to doing certain crimes, and there were some who didn't. And Alton was able to get his client off.
Right, I remember that, because they talked about that in the Amsterdam News as well.
Yeah, he was able to get his client off, and it worked out very well in terms of him being able to get his client off. But right after he got his client off, that's when they went after him.
Yes, they did.
They went after him.
And they never stopped.
That's right. And they took his license in New York State. I think he may be able to practice in other states, but not here. But I'm not sure. That's a question that the public can look up if they're interested in that type of thing.
Right.
But they was trying to destroy him.
Yeah. And that's what happens when you challenge the system.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. There was people who came out in our defense, people who came out against us, and I like to describe the people who came out in our defense as the activist community.
Right.
Now, the reason I say that, the activist community, was because there were a number of different groups that came out. A number of different groups.
Right.
The first group that rode us to the courthouse was the Brothers from the Nation of Islam, Mosque number 7C, right over in Brooklyn, New York. You see? They rode us there. The December 12th movement.
Yes.
Elambe Brath's group.
That's my man, Elambe Brath.
You see, a lot of people. And Alton Maddox was there because, at that time, I don't know if you remember, he and Sharpton were part of the same movement coming out of the slave theater. So a lot of time they say Sharpton, but Alton Maddox and Sharpton.
Right.
They were in one movement coming out of the slave theater.
Right. That's right.
And their people were there. You see? And it was people who were familiar with how the prison industrial complex worked and who had seen it in action for so many years.
Right.
Because, you know, when you look at the Nation of Islam, they had been a part of the prison industrial complex
Right.
movement
Right.
ever since they became the Nation of Islam.
Right. It's synonymous, one and the same. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
indeed. Yes,
Absolutely.
indeed. They
Well,
had worked a while.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, we need to probably invite you back to come talk some more about us and keep us abreast of the wrongful conviction restitution act or legislation.
Yeah, restitution,
Restitution.
recovery, whatever you,
Right.
but you can find it.
No. I got some of it. I did get some of it. But
Okay.
we're gonna bring you back once this thing is done in Albany, and hopefully that'll come out on the positive side and end of that.
Yes,
So,
and what you should do is come on up there with us.
well, you know I got to work. You know
You
I
can
got that
do
much- I got that
networking
much-
and do these shows on the road.
Well, you know
Everywhere
what?
we stop, you can throw a screen in.
Well, maybe. But it's been a pleasure, Miss Salaam. We're gonna bring you back up here though, and that goes without saying. We're gonna bring you back up here. I want to also let the public know that the NAACP is actively trying to contact the 80,000 ex-felons, ex-inmates to register because they're able to vote now. They're able to vote, and they're going to be doing some stuff within the next couple of weeks, maybe next couple of months, in order to register them to vote because it's the law now, and you might as well take advantage of that. And it's been a pleasure, Ms. Salaam. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we're going to bring you back. And again, this is the Digital Diaspora. And we're going to conclude our program with a song that's apropos. I think it is, you know. And we're going to be out. But also remember, in NAACP, all of us got somebody involved with the prison industrial complex. And some that haven't been in the jail, get them to come out, get them to register to vote, and participate in society. All right? All right, so those that tell don't know, and those that know don't tell. Take care. Peace.